Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past week was filled with all sorts of news regarding the upcoming iPhone 14 as far as its display and what to expect, as well as the upcoming iPhone SE, HomePod mini, and much more. This is your news update for the week of January 16th, 2022. And the first thing has to do with iOS 14. If you watched my follow-up video the other day, I mentioned this as well, but if you were looking to stay on iOS 14 updates with Apple providing regular security updates to it, like they said they would a little while ago, it looks like they're no longer going to be offering this to earlier versions. So if you're on iOS 14.8 and you want to go to 14.8.1, or maybe they would release a 14.8.2, they're no longer going to do that. Originally, you could install those, and it looks like they've backtracked since iOS 15.2. Maybe it has to do with the amount of staff working on the next versions or the updates to iOS 15, but this time it looks like you won't be able to do that any longer. I was really looking forward to that, but it seems like you're not going to be able to do that. Also, there was news about the iPhone 13 noise cancellation. This has been a concern for quite some time for a lot of people, where the option is no longer there. If you go into settings, accessibility, and then you go down to audio/visual, on previous phones, other than the iPhone 13 models, you have the option for turning on noise cancellation when making a phone call. This is no longer on the iPhone 13 series, and according to a support document or support kind of conversation between Apple and a user, they're no longer going to offer this. It was never a feature, and so whether or not they're doing this differently, I thought for sure they would add this with a software update, but it seems like, at least according to that, it's not going to be something we'll see on iPhone 13 models. So that's a little bit of a disappointment for those that use it. Now, if you were looking for Apple's polishing cloth, it's back in stock. It's about $19, and you can see it's just a polishing cloth. Fairly expensive, but it is pretty nice if you've ever used one. At first I didn't like them, but I started to grow to like them as they really get rid of smudges pretty easily. So they're back in stock if you're looking for one of those. A few weeks ago, I mentioned a plant in India owned by Foxconn that manufactures iPhones that was shut down for poor working conditions. Apparently this has been remedied, and it's now open as of last Wednesday. Foxconn has said, "We have implemented a range of corrective actions to ensure this cannot happen again, and a rigorous monitoring system to ensure workers can raise any concerns they may have, including anonymously." So it was closed for 3 weeks, it's now open, and hopefully those conditions are much better for those working there. Now, Google is working to try and get Apple to support RCS messaging. This is a newer standard that works across MMS or typical SMS messaging, but can be encrypted and much more in future versions, and implements a bunch of different updates and changes. However, Apple doesn't currently support it, and apparently Google really wants to push them to do this. While I don't expect Apple to really push iMessage onto Android at any time, having other apps similar to that would be really nice. And I know in the United States, most people just use their default messaging system on Android, but around the world, most people use things like WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal, so I don't know that this is much of a concern, but I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments below. Now, Apple's private relay was in the news last week, where apparently it was being disabled on certain carriers. Apparently, according to Apple, no carriers have technically disabled it yet, and T-Mobile even claimed there was a bug that disabled it. If you're not familiar with it, it's under Settings. Then if you go to your name and then to iCloud, and you'll see iCloud Private Relay, which keeps your internet activity private. Some companies in the European Union wanted to sort of ban this, saying it would harm their telecom networks, and I don't technically agree with that, as I've worked at telecom networks, and this should work just fine, but they don't really like that option since they wouldn't as easily be able to advertise to you and things like that. Apple has said that there is nothing in iOS 15.2 that would disable this, despite what T-Mobile was saying, where they were saying be sure to check these settings, as Apple could have disabled it. So at this time, it has not been disabled by Apple in the update or anything like that. Just make sure if you want to use it that it's turned on, and turned on in your cellular settings as well. There's a bug that was found in the most recent version of Safari on not only your iPhone, but iPad OS and Mac OS as well, that can allow you to have your data tracked as far as your browsing history and what you're doing online in real time if they're using indexed database or a different sort of indexed database feature from the website itself. This affects Safari for Mac and also Chrome on iOS devices, since Chrome has to use WebKit. So this is something they may have to patch pretty soon in the future to avoid this being a privacy concern. So maybe we'll see something in the future with iOS 15.2.2 to patch this or something else. If you're someone that plays Fortnite and you've been missing it since Apple removed it from the App Store with their dispute with Epic, it looks like you're going to be able to play it again through NVIDIA's GeForce Now. They've got a new sign-up page where you can sign up for this so you can play it through GeForce Now, and you can sign up for the closed beta right now. So this should be coming later this year, but you can sign up and join the waitlist now if you want to try it out for yourself. I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out. There's a new legislation that's been submitted in the USA that would require terms of service to be easy to digest language, explaining terms as well as sensitive personal data they collect. This is instead of maybe the 100-page privacy policy you have to agree to or submit when you set up an iPhone or a Windows computer or pretty much any device or app these days. So it would be great to actually see this where it would implement something to say, make this information clearer and not so long, as it would take a day to read some of those, as they're 100 pages, some of them. Now, there's a feature that's not really a rumor, but I wanted to mention it, and Apple's introduced Apple CarKey with iOS 15, and currently you can use that with BMW. Similar to how you can walk up to your car with this using Bluetooth and Tesla, you can use this as your actual car key using NFC with a BMW right now. According to Mac Rumors and Mark Gurman, they've said that this feature will be coming to the Genesis brand soon and other manufacturers later this summer. So if you've been looking for that feature, hopefully you won't need a new car to use that, but if you have sort of an iPhone app that you can use to unlock your car, this may be implemented in the future pretty soon. Now, like I mentioned, with iOS 15, we may see a 15.2.2 to patch that Safari bug, as they'll need to update it with that, maybe some other bugs as well. And iOS 15.3 Beta 3 or RC should be this week based on what we had in the past. So I mentioned that in my follow-up video as well as the update video. And in the past, last year and the years before that, Apple introduced new betas, and then a week later or so last year, they implemented the RC. So we had the release candidate and then a final release before the end of the month. We could see this sort of set up again, or we could just see a beta 3 this coming week, but I would expect something by at least Wednesday at this point. So maybe we'll see that. And then again, the release at the end of the month, then the implementation of Apple's digital ID, where they're going to test that out in a few airports in February. So I would expect some sort of update before then so they can try that out in different airports around the US. Now, as far as iOS 16, I wanted to mention one thing about it. We already know Apple is deep into working on iOS 16, and apparently the code name is Sydney. So Apple gives code names to everything, and it looks like the name of it is Sydney. I actually hadn't heard that before, but that's something that they do regularly, and they've named it that. So Sydney is the name. Hopefully we'll see some new changes. There's not really any new information about it other than that many of the features with iOS 16 are going to be what was planned for iOS 15, but they didn't have time to do and implement. So they wanted to push a lot of new features, maybe a design change, hopefully, and maybe a new control center and more. So we'll have to wait until June at WWDC to see that, but it looks like Apple is really working on that. Hopefully we'll see some really great features this time around and much better stability. Now, as far as upcoming devices, the iPhone SE keeps getting in the news, where the iPhone SE 3 or third generation is expected to be called the iPhone SE plus 5G. This would be a new naming convention for Apple, and I'm a little bit skeptical of this, but it's coming from Ross Young, who has a very good track record and seems to be one of, if not the most accurate leaker. So it would be similar to what we have here with the current generation iPhone SE, but instead have 5G, probably with millimeter wave, as well as support for MagSafe. So you would have MagSafe support where it doesn't now. It has wireless charging, but you could put a MagSafe adapter on the back and charge it like this. So it would be able to charge and work like you would expect. So that seems to be reasonable. I would love to see a larger screen. Other rumors are saying that it could look more like an iPhone XR and maybe have a larger screen. However, a larger iPhone SE is said to be coming in 2023, according to Ross Young. So it looks like we won't have that for another year or so for a larger size, but the iPhone SE is said to get an update. iPhone 14 is a ways out, but there's a lot of news about it because Apple has to ramp up production so early based on the amount of devices they have to produce. Typically, they're about 3 years ahead of what we actually see releasing to the public, and we expect expect it in September like normal. But Ross Young has said that the iPhone 14 Pro models will have a pill-shaped and hole-punch display, so it would be combined for Face ID. Instead of having it completely under the display, it would be one for maybe a camera and a smaller pill, and that would give you the Face ID components, such as the dot projector and more. So this is what it sort of looks like, according to some renders out there and concepts, but it's hard to say if they're actually going to stick with this or do something unique or keep the notch altogether. However, on the Pro models, most people are saying this, and again, Ross Young is very accurate when it comes to displays. Reports earlier this week said that all iPhone 14 models would have ProMotion and 6 GB of RAM. However, due to supply constraints, it looks like the manufacturer who makes the panels for these, the LTPO panels, wouldn't be able to produce enough to really handle all devices. So it looks like it won't be coming to all devices, but rather just the Pro devices, which I would suspect anyway. However, at least 6 GB of RAM are still rumored for all devices, and 48 megapixel cameras on the Pro devices as well. It would be the first time they upgraded the camera from its megapixel size of 12 since the iPhone 6S. So this would be a welcome change. Of course, they'll need to let in a lot more light with such a small sensor with that amount of megapixels, but hopefully they'll do a great job with that, and maybe we'll even get 8K recording as it's rumored. Now, for those of you that love Touch ID, it looks like Touch ID was actually tested on the iPhone 13 models, but never implemented and scrapped. I would love to see an under-the-display fingerprint sensor come back to iPhone, as many of you would, or maybe on the power button, but it looks like so far there's no plans to bring that back. I would love to see that. And then as far as Face ID, iPhone 15 is said to be where iPhone will gain Face ID under the display. So we should see something like that in the future, but it will be a little while. According to Mark Gurman, Apple had originally planned to make the HomePod Mini battery-powered, where it would be portable and be more easily placed wherever you'd want instead of having a cord connecting to it. That's one of the things my wife said initially when I brought home the HomePod Mini. She thought that it was battery-powered and couldn't believe that there was actually a cable. Now, this could be an inconvenience if you wanted to keep it powered all of the time, but it would make sense to maybe have MagSafe, where it just sits on it, powers it, and charges it, and then when you're done, you remove it. So maybe that was an original plan. It doesn't look like they're planning that anytime soon, but I personally would love to see that. With iPad Pro, Apple typically updates this every single year, and I reported before that Apple was planning to bring wireless charging to it, maybe by using a glass back. However, it looks like they may have scrapped that design instead in favor of a glass Apple, which would be a little bit larger, and then use MagSafe. So you could have MagSafe attached to the Apple, maybe a new MagSafe design, and also one that charges faster, as it's expected to have a larger battery to get better battery life. So it looks like they're going to update that on the iPad Pro in some way with wireless charging, as well as an updated internal chipset and camera that matches that of the iPhone 13 models. So we could expect that, although there isn't many other changes that are expected, since iPad Pro is kind of their top of the line device at this point. So a larger battery would definitely be welcome though. And with the upcoming iPad Air, it's expected to have a 5th generation coming soon with 5G like we have on this device. So if you have a 5G iPad where they put millimeter wave on the bottom, they could do the same to the iPad Air, as well as center stage that we have on the camera and more. So again, updated internals and more with the iPad Air. Apple's upcoming mixed reality headset, this is Google Glass, just to give you an idea of what Google did years ago, is said to be in the works still and was originally meant to be shown in WWDC in 2021 with a launch in 2022. However, the headset may again be delayed later this year or even to 2023 with those familiar with the plans. It may take until WWDC 2023 for us to see it, but iOS 16 is apparently going to contain some of the foundations of the headset's code. So maybe we'll see it very soon. It looks like it's done, but the chipset inside, apparently Apple is having problems with it having heat issues, dissipating that M1 heat, and an additional sort of chipset that is hard to get the heat out of it. So they're working on that. Kuo has also said that the headset will come with a 96-watt charger that's used by the MacBook Pro. So it would use a good amount of power and have a larger battery in it. Apple has formed a task group to work on an Apple Car and is planning to work with Korean manufacturers such as Hyundai and Kia and LG for the displays. So that's in the works, and maybe we'll see it in 2025, 2030. We don't really know, and sometimes Apple scraps plans altogether if it just doesn't work out, but it does look like they're planning something. And so that's everything as far as news and rumors for this past week. If there's anything else you'd love to have me cover in these updates, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.